Hello, I'm Jake Boudrot, Civic Journalist at Tello Community Television. In this episode of Strait Talk, the President and CEO of Maritime Launch Services reacted to receiving approval from the provincial government for $30.7 million from the Capital Investment Tax Credit to support the construction of a dedicated launch pad for small launch vehicles near Canso. With me is the President and CEO of Maritime Launch Services. Welcome, Steve Mateer.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here, Jake.
So Maritime Launch Services is a Canadian-owned commercial space company based in Nova Scotia. Maritime Launch is developing Spaceport Nova Scotia, a launch site that will provide satellite delivery services to clients to support the growing commercial space transportation industry over a wide range of inclinations. Spaceport Nova Scotia will allow small and medium-sized launch vehicles to place their satellites into low Earth orbit. Spaceport Nova Scotia is Canada's first commercial orbital launch complex. So first off, maybe you can talk a bit about the project outside of what I just described, and where exactly is it located? I know it's near Canso, but where is that going?
So if you, the location for the spaceport itself proper is if it's on the main peninsula of Nova Scotia at the very northeast tip. So the next closest point is Europe from there. And there's a little town of Canso, Hazel Hill, and Little Dover nearby. And we're on a piece of what's called Crown land south of Canso on 335 acres. Set up right next to the water so that we can essentially launch over water without overflying any population at all the way down to South America, over to Africa and Europe. So it's that huge expanse of ocean underneath us that really makes us a unique spot for serving this industry that we're in. So where we started though was in 2016 doing a study looking at locations in North America that could serve where this market is going, the satellite market. And the old places that people wanted to put their satellites into orbit historically have been in geosynchronous orbit. So those are 25, 30,000 kilometers from Earth, stationary in a sense that they're pointing at the same place over the Earth all the time, like a Sirius XM radio, for example. Well, since then, because we're transmitting data up and down and across and building these constellations, these networks, if you will, for global broadband and near Earth imaging, we're now looking at 1,000 kilometers away from Earth for these low Earth orbit satellites. So you don't just stick them out along the equator, 30,000, kilometers away. They've got to be tucked in closely. And there's not single ones, there's dozens, hundreds, even thousands of these. So we were looking for that place in North America because that's where most satellites on Earth are manufactured, where we could reach those orbital inclinations. We did a study and identified this location as the place to be. We looked at Manitoba, and we looked at Newfoundland and Alaska. I was on a beach in Chiapas, Mexico with the Mexican Space Agency. We really looked around for that right spot. And this is it. I mean, this is the place that we believed would serve that market the best, which is at the end of the day, that satellite client. So we did the EA, started that in 16, had to do a focus report, got all that completed in 19, did a bunch of other studies, looking at seasonal migration of birds and noise studies and all kinds of things. And in 2022, got the full permit for the land for 40-year lease and full permit for construction. And we've been off to the races ever since.
I know that you're using it as or the intent is to use it as a launching pad for satellites. So there is a big need for that. There's a lot of companies that use satellites. So maybe you can speak to that need.
Yeah, they call it the space economy, right? The space economy, even a couple of years ago, by the World Economic Forum, pegged it at over $600 billion US per year, headed for $1 to $1.5 trillion in the next 5 to 10 years. So it's been on a steady growth path, and it's really about, think of Starlink. Um, They've got more and more customers coming online using their services. They're using the services that come off the satellites. So near Earth imaging, global broadband, the stuff we're doing, banking, medical, anything and everything going on today, it really has a tie to satellites. People don't really get how much of their day is really tied to the fact that there are satellites in orbit providing service to them. And so that market is just continuing to grow. Internet of Things, remote control of vehicles, you name it, it's just on a path of growth path. So it's really about serving that market. So where's the bottleneck? The bottleneck is spaceports and rockets to be able to get them into orbit because the satellites are built on the ground and they've got to get into space. So it's really about finding that location and finding the right location from a number of strategic points, logistics and location and educational, institutions and workforce, et cetera, that really constitute what makes the spaceport right. So Florida has been launching almost twice a week. They can't really get past about 100 a year that they basically did last year and the year before. And so there's a real lack of additional launch capability. Vandenberg is a government range also. They can only launch due south. Florida can't do due south. They can do other ranges of inclination. So it's really a nice spot hanging over the top of the North Atlantic that can serve the polar, solar, sun synchronous kinds of orbits, as well as the ones that are off that inclination where the satellite clients want to put them into orbit. So it's really about us providing the place to alleviate the bottleneck.
Now, in June, your company obtained approval from the provincial government for the capital investment tax credit to support the construction of a dedicated launch pad for small launch vehicles. According to that announcement, approximately $30.7 million in CITC funding has been authorized for qualified infrastructure projects at Spaceport, Nova Scotia, which is near Canso. How is this considered an essential addition to the project, this funding?
It's a total endorsement. We also have one with the federal government through the Strategic Innovation Fund, another almost $13 million committed through that program, a term sheet for that as well. So to me, it's really about the recognition by the provincial government about what this opportunity means. What we're providing, right, is in the broader context of today, right? We put ourselves in the geopolitics of today. We're providing sovereign launch for Canada. We're providing dual use location for putting commercial satellites into orbit, but perhaps supporting other, D&D if they have assets they have to put in. So that dual use technology is an important piece as well. It's an infrastructure project, so it's made in Canada, built and done in Canada. And the rural region there in Nova Scotia is all about economic development as well. The community there is anxious about these jobs. So you're really hitting those key boxes, I think, that are really important. And it's also at a time when sovereign launch is so important. It's just not there for us before this point. And with the threats coming from south of the border, 51st state and all that, horse hockey, sorry. It just, to me, it's like this is that time that it really becomes more important to make sure not only do we have our own sovereign launch capability, but we also can partner with our NATO allies in Europe as well as the U.S. to be able to offer this. So we can offer resiliency, we can offer capacity, and and for our southern neighbors, but we can also offer opportunity for our European partners and for Canadian satellite manufacturers to get their own stuff into orbit. We had a client here in Halifax that recently had a satellite sent to SpaceX and launched out of Vandenberg just a couple of months ago. after they had already shipped and had been delivered down there for putting it onto the launch vehicle to go, they got hit with a tariff after the fact. What are you going to do? Your business depends on getting things into orbit. So this is a really, the timing of this thing really maturing and being basically beyond shovel ready. Initial roads are cut in. We've already got a concrete pad in place and have done a suborbital launch already. It's that kind of readiness that I think arms us for today and where we are geopolitically as well.
Now, you call this an endorsement. So, I guess the funding is good to have, but to have this backing of the provincial and federal governments is vital for your project.
It really is, and that recognition that they have a role to play in this as well. Yes, we are a commercial company, and yes, we publicly traded it on the CBOE exchange in Canada under the ticker MaxQ. And yes, we have shareholders and profit and loss, et cetera, that we need to be mindful of. But we also have an obligation and a commitment as Canadians to be able to provide launch capability where it doesn't exist.
Now, Maritime Launch Services said the dedicated launch pad is a separate, standalone launch platform designed to serve your company's growing customer base of international launch providers. Do you have a number on how many you're looking at, or is it that there's interest out there? It's not quantified yet, but there are people that prospective clients and customers once this is constructed.
We have several signed letters of intent with launch vehicle clients, both Canadian, European, and US already in place. We actually just announced this past Tuesday morning a contract with Reaction Dynamics to support their first orbital launch. Reaction Dynamics is a upcoming Canadian company that's building some very, very important and unique technology and launch vehicle that they intend to fly and will fly from Spaceport Nova Scotia. I think their goal is no later than 2028. So we've already got one of the pads essentially lined out and committed. We have the potential for an additional 3 pads, and we have keen customers for all of those. We'll be making some more discussions and more announcements about that in the coming months.
The project includes the full suite of specialized infrastructure required for safe and efficient orbital launch operations, including a flame diverter, gas and propellant system interfaces, electrical and power systems, civil works, and other mission-critical components tailored to support modern small launch vehicles. Are these essential components in building this project, or are there other aspects you also need to finalize or incorporate into this project?
That really covers it pretty well. The idea is, we're a service provider to these launch clients, and yes, they have their tailored specialty support equipment, and they have their rocket, and I need to incorporate their specific technology into my facility. But at the end of the day, I'm pretty much an infrastructure project that brings down, roads and power and water and wastewater treatment and the kinds in high-speed internet, et cetera, fiber, those kinds of things down to give them the capabilities they need to operate on their launch pad.
When the announcement was made, you stated that this support sends a clear message to the global space industry that Nova Scotia is open for business. Now, you mentioned how the funding from that fund wasn't an endorsement, and not only an endorsement, but it seems like the province and the federal government are willing to put their money where their mouth is. Not just give some tepid endorsement, but actually are willing to do the work and do what needs to be done for your project to reach fruition.
Yeah, and it is really an important part of it as well. And I am mindful that we've been working with them for years and keeping them informed and updated and in environmental assessments and bird studies in the provincial level and even at the federal level, working with Transport Canada and Nav Canada, airspace, aeronautical studies. We're doing our homework, and we've done that legwork, and we've invested over $25 million to bring us to where we are today. And I think part of that is that recognition that we have de-risked this thing so much. A 40-year lease and permits for construction, suborbital launches under our belt, great relationships with the regulatory bodies all around, that timing is right. And I think that was part of it. We as a country have not had orbital launch capability. We've always depended on the U.S. and it's really an important time for us to look at stepping into that next place of maritime launch, delivering orbital launches for Canada and our allied partners.
Yeah, and that kind of fits in with my next question. During the announcement, you said the funding is helping to build the foundation for Canada's commercial space sector. So you're not just talking about your project, you're talking about the space sector in general.
Oh, indeed. Well, and if you think about the satellite client at the end of the day, right, they're the ones. So my clients are the launch vehicle customers. They're the ones that have invested and are building the technology to be able to get to orbit, and they need a place that they can launch from frequently in order to make their financial models work. Well, for their financial models to work, they've got to have satellite clients lined up and ready. Well, North America is the place where most of the satellites on Earth are manufactured. So, and that includes Canada. Canada has always been really a strong developer of different satellite capabilities and technologies. Quite a list of companies that are building satellites that have always had to ship them to south of the border or to India or other places to try to be able to get their products into orbit to do with Canadian Space Agency with RadarSat, for example. Those kinds of things are so we have a domestic demand that's already there as well. I think that will certainly benefit from having that launch capability for Canada in Canada.
During the announcement, it was mentioned that the infrastructure will generate substantial benefits for the municipality of the District of Guysborough and the province of Nova Scotia in the form of up to 30 jobs being created. What will those jobs entail at the project?
There's a That's a low end number, I would tell you, and it doesn't include the staff that comes with the rockets and the satellite clients as well. So it is really looking at more of as the launch tempo picks up, closer to a couple of hundred people that are really in the community, either living or staying, and that speaks to that economic opportunity. So hotels and restaurants and as they say, tires and toilet paper. All these things are needed for a launch site to be able to operate. Is going to be drawn as much as possible from the local community there. So there is, certainly an impact potential for that. We had the Conference Board of Canada do a study for us independently, looking at what the economic impact would be locally, as well as regionally, as well as across Canada. And it is really quite substantial.
So yeah, you mentioned the prospect of employment with the project, and that you anticipate it's going to be more than 30 jobs, and that it's going to involve also people moving to the area and setting up permanently. But supposing that there's going to be a component for the local population to be able to get some employment at the project there.
Absolutely. I've been in the schools. I like to go in and do presentations and get the kids excited about what's going on in their community. And there is a lot of interest in future employment possibilities. And we certainly see that. I mean, the range of jobs are, one thinks of a spaceport, they think of these, geeky people in slide rules and things like that. And there are a few of those, yes. But there's also a lot of trades kinds of work, instrumentation technicians, controls technicians, mechanical technicians, plumbers, pipe fitters, environmental scientists, and administrative kinds of positions. There's a whole host of those kinds of job opportunities. There's security, of course, for the site, et cetera. So there's a broad range of jobs that can be really picked up there.
Another benefit from the project is in the form of infrastructure development and ongoing operations, which is expected to drive demand across local construction, hospitality, and service sectors that your company noted. So I assume too the local prospect for employment, that local firms, organizations will also be able to benefit from this project as well?
Oh, certainly. So, the municipality of Guysborough, they're always very supportive of anything that brings economic development to the area. They're really quite forward thinking in that regard. Have been very successful with offshore LNG and green hydrogen and us and the spaceport project. So they've been very supportive because they see just that opportunity. In the local area, there's the Canso Area Development Association. We have a liaison committee that we're a part of, have been a part of for years. So we are always in communication with the community about, the timing and tempo of where we are, so they can make their plans accordingly. A lot of people have Airbnbs in the short term before any major hotels step in. There are restaurants that are doing well. Some have pizzas named after rockets already.
So now that the funding has been secured, what are the next steps for the project?
We transition the project from a one launch vehicle plan to a multi-launch vehicle plan about 24 months ago. We had been planning on a launch vehicle from Ukraine originally, and that was already approved and in work. Because of the war in Ukraine, it's difficult to see that thing forward, but we wanted to keep the project moving. So we've transitioned from one launch pad to a multi-launch pad offering, if you will. So we're in some design phase right now that looks at how we're going to adapt from one pad to three, potentially four pads. And so a lot of engineering work is going on behind the scenes. We'll have to expand some of the road network that we've already got in place to be able to accommodate the multiple pads, working with power companies and fiber companies, et cetera, to lay out the plan to get power to all these places. So construction will pick up again later this fall, but really will be in earnest, I think, next spring when things will really start going nuts.
You mentioned that. So next spring, it looks like things are going to ramp up to some degree, and that at this time next year, the project's going to look quite different from what it does now.
Well, indeed, and I would say ramp up. It's just a different kind of ramp up, a visible ramp up, because there is a lot of activity going on behind the scenes. We've been working with the federal government, for example, with the completion of the Technology Safeguard Agreement. That's a treaty that Canada and the U.S. negotiated and announced just a little over a year ago. That was completed, and that's really central to how we can operate and bring satellites from the U.S. up here to be able to launch. How we're going to control and maintain security around that technology. So those kinds of things you don't see going on behind the scenes until they blast out with an announcement of some sort. Much like all the work we're doing with reaction dynamics, it's not just an announcement of an investment in a plan to launch, but it's also about where they're going to launch, what their facility needs are, and how we can incorporate that into our current design. So there's a lot going on behind the scenes, but yeah, it'll be a lot more visible, let's put it that way.
I look forward to seeing that progress on that project and keeping abreast of what's going on. So hopefully we can keep the lines of communication open, and I really appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to speak with me. Thank you very much.
Very much my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you for watching Strait Talk. Please tune in again to find out what we will be talking about.